Okay. This is Tuesday the 14th. We are back from recess from yesterday. We will proceed with our budget hearings. And first up is the assessor's office. Stephen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
Should we ask Denise to do it? Just be funny.
Good morning, Denise. Good morning, Steve.
The budget for next year is very similar to the budget for this year. We have really no control over the top section of the personal services. That is what it is according to the contracts. And we're not adding people. We're not removing anybody. That is just, it's actually a little bit of a decrease in GIS plat fees, but personal services is wound up a little bit. The things we can control are the materials and services. We looked very carefully at last year's, and we actually cut out $11,500 out of last year. And that, last year was a pretty slim budget, and we figured the things we can cut, if later on, if we need to fix that, we'll come back and ask. But we took $1,000 out of under $5,000 IT. We took out software expense, licensing and maintenance. Thankfully, the mapping software, we had a slight decrease on their what they're charging us this year. Insurance premiums went down a little bit, and it totals to $11,500 of cuts. So the highlights that are going to hit us this year, we have one of our appraisers. We have one commercial industrial appraiser. He told us yesterday he's planning to retire August 1st. So we need to continue training somebody to take his place. It's questionable whether the employee that we were training is going to be available. He's probably not, so we're going to train one of our residential appraisers to be a commercial industrial appraiser. Right now, we're trying to figure out which one that's going to be. We do also have one of our residential appraisers cross-training for the farm and forest appraiser. Not that she's going to replace her, but it's going to add additional function to our farm forestry appraisal. We have not had any field audits in a decade, maybe longer than that. Bob, you could tell me how many audits were done?
It's probably been
20 years.
12. Larry Wallace did the last one.
Well,
actually, he did for compliance, whether they were farming or foresting, of course, but he went out and did a total soil survey comparing the soil maps to what we have for record and adjusted that.
and the soil maps are still good. Those are really
Well, they do
minimally
change
changed.
because sometimes the folks let the trees grow into the pastures, that sort of stuff, so.
in the big scheme of things with the problem areas we need to look at. That's down on the bottom of our
Well,
list.
you were wanting to know what, been in the field, and that's what they were doing.
But right, we do need field auditing because we know we're a little bit shaky on facts to back up our forestry values. So I mentioned the personal services increase. That's about a 3%, 3.25% increase, but that's a factor of the contracts. You have requested us to submit a reduced budget also. We have proposed a 10% labor reduction, in which we're looking at, in lieu of cutting people, we would like to cut, if we have to, hours that our employees do work. So instead of 40, it would be 36 hours a week. Some of the employees in our office work 4/10s, some work 5/8s, and we'll figure out a way to fit all those pieces together if we do have to cut hours. On this second page of the narrative, I have some possible variations, but once the budget is approved, we'll make that work. We'll figure out how to do it. I can't imagine anybody wanting to leave a nice, secure county job in a job market like this, but it happens. So there should be a lot of available good talent out there if the county does need to hire. Can I answer any questions for you about our line items?
Did I hear you right? You say you're going to cross-train for farm and forest appraiser, or is that person going to retire? What, I didn't quite catch all that.
No, we have one residential appraiser. Appraiser 2 is willing to learn the farm forest appraisal specialty.
Okay.
The farm forest appraiser we have has not been in the field
Okay, that
since I've
person
been in
go,
the county.
the current farm forest appraiser
Right.
go in the field?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
She's not going to go into the field that I can see. She actually does affidavits and exemptions. I mean, she does everything else, but she doesn't go into the field.
Oh.
We have somebody to actually go into the field, but it's not just a matter of being a residential appraiser and walking out and looking at trees and saying, oh yeah, now I know everything that I just looked at. So it's a training process, and in the very worst case, we're going to have a broader level of training and experience for the residential appraisers.
Okay.
We have about 44,000 total accounts, and almost 89% of those are real property accounts. We have about 3% are personal property, about 6% are manufactured structures, and almost 2% are utility accounts. Out of the total, the real property accounts, we have 39,000 of those. About 17, almost 17.5% are commercial, about 6% are industrial. Multifamily is a little over 2%, and single-family residential, that's the bulk of it, that's 3/4 of them.
Okay. Greg, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, I thought maybe you did. Questions for Steve? Melissa?
No.
Sven?
I have a question, I guess. Could the commercial appraiser that's retiring not be filled, that position not be filled, if you're cross-training someone?
Well, we are trying to train somebody to fill that position, but that's about 25% of our assessed value that comes in from the commercial and industrial. If we don't have anybody trained, there's nobody to do that. Now, we had to stop early this year. Generally, the way our appraisal year works is, first thing we do right after the taxes are set out, tax statements. The first thing we do is look at all the new property that was built, put on the tax roll last year. When that's done, that's called rechecks. So the bulk of our new assessed value comes from that. When that's substantially done, then we go into reappraisal, which is looking at all the existing homes. It used to be every 6th year, and when Measure 50 came into effect, that 6th year went out the window, and they just did it on a system of when it gets out of whack, you go appraise that area, and it was hit or miss. Places like Bandon were up, they need to be reappraised, and they dropped like a rock, and it needed to be. So for a few years, it was chasing the market, Bandon, and lots of other things. The staff was cut by half. We have 16 now. Used to be over 30. But what we're trying to do is get back onto a schedule of, we were hoping to be 6, 7, 8 years. With this corona throwing us into a loop this year, it's probably going to be closer to 10 or 11 year cycle of reappraisals. So to train somebody up, we're going to have to take them away from residential and then refill that position as soon as we can, but take the existing skill of one of the residential appraisers and spin them up as quickly as possible to be commercial and industrial. And the difference really is income. Commercial properties are based less on how much it costs to build a brand new building, because there are not a whole lot of brand new buildings. Some, but not a lot. It's income approach, sales approach, and that's a very math intensive, Excel intensive system, and that's what I was hired to do originally. I did it for about a year, and I was barely trained when I quit doing that and became assessor, and then we've hired somebody else to do it who came in trained, and he's been here for 9 years, and now he's going to retire. We still, our office staff hasn't gotten any younger. We're still, the appraisal staff average age, I think, is over 60. I don't recall what the exact number is, but we have, most of the office is eligible for Social Security. So your question, can we do without the commercial industrial appraiser? No, we can't.
That wasn't my question. My question was, if you're cross-training somebody, could a position be left empty?
I would say no to continue. We're looking at about, just because of what's happened this year, the total assessed value is going to be about 1.5% less than it would have been had we continued on with our normal appraisal. To lose another employee on top of, to lose another appraiser on top of that decrease, we're looking at 1.5%, $6 million to the county. It's going to be county general fund. It'll drop 1.5%, maybe a little bit more. I have a real fuzzy crystal ball,
Okay.
but we would see it. We would definitely feel it in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
John or Neil, you have questions?
No. No.
Anybody else here?
No.
Okay.
I move tentative approval of the assessor's budget.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Melissa? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One thing you should know that yesterday we did, as the Board of Commissioners, after our budget meeting, was that we changed how empty positions are refilled. It's just not with the the commissioner liaison anymore, it's with all three commissioners.
And that's for any position that comes open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throughout the county, especially in the general fund, of course.
I'm not sure I understand. It needs approval of all three.
Well, yeah, majority, of course, like normal.
At a regular, or at a meeting, not
At a
just
meeting,
our
not just,
Steve, that should make things easier for you, given who your liaison is.
The
You're right.
nicest one.
but it's a deviation from just getting a hold of your liaison commissioner and they say yay or nay and off you go.
Yeah,
And then you go talk to HR.
Carolyn's going to send it out as a temporary policy.
Just so you know.
When does that take effect?
Hmm?
Is that immediately, or?
Yeah,
Yesterday.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
Yesterday.
yeah.
Thank you.
So all the ones on the board of the various departments may or may not be filled, even though they're advertised.
Well, we are one of the major rainmakers for the budget. We would ask that you support us to keep us manned at the level we are now.
I used to do the same argument sitting in your spot. I
Thank you
know
very
full
much,
well.
so you would totally understand.
Yes, I do. All righty. Megan, you have the CAPA all worked out for them, right? It's what, about 17% or so?
closer to probably 15, 16.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Shoot, it was over 30 when I was assessor. It was supported by the state and they keep cutting back. Okay. Treasurer, Megan.
Katie.
Katie, oh, Katie's gonna present, oh, cool. Thank you, Denise and Stephen.
Thank you both.
I did. Get my germs and viruses off you too. You know, 10 years from now, you're going to be seeing TV ads. Were you exposed to
That's
We
right.
were just talking about that in our office.
We were supposed to hand sanitizer in 2020.
Yeah. If so, call this number.
Yep.
Did you ingest a lot of Lysol?
Good morning, Katie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'll start with the finance tax budget. There's not really much that's changed. A couple years ago, we did RFP for banking services, and so our fees are going down. We budgeted a little bit higher the previous year for that, but those have been going down. And then we have, we're gonna have to do a new lockbox this year contract. The old lockbox has stopped providing services, and so we're working on trying to get that taken care of before tax starts again. So we do have a little higher budget for that, just because of the startup costs.
And it being unknown at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the $25,000?
Yeah. We're really not sure exactly how much it's gonna cost, or we have a couple different options right now that we're looking at and trying to find the best cost. We have our 10% reduction budget, which pretty much all that we can do is cut an employee. And that would actually negatively affect our CAFA grant. So that's with the finance tax. It's not too
Been
much.
a lot of the 18,549, a lot of that is our Helion contract, which is, it goes up every year. It's our tax collection software.
You lost me. 18,000?
For contracted services,
Front page at the bottom.
for finance, the increase in contracted services.
Yeah, the Helion goes up every year a little bit. But we do, if other counties come on board, we often do get a little bit back on that.
On the supporting documents, Helion isn't listed, is it?
It's in soft, yeah. I'm
It's
looking
rolled
at
in with
that.
something?
So the 18,000 is the lockbox. The Helion increase is,
It's not that
I
much.
don't see
It says
anything.
yeah,
retail
it's
lock.
about $4,000. So, sorry, I was wrong.
Mark the day.
Helion's on page 4 of 5.
It was recorded if you want to visit later.
Oh, okay.
You find it there on
Helion, I got it.
page 4?
Yes.
Okay. And Helion also runs the assessment system
And I think planning uses
and part
it
of the
too.
clerks too, I think.
Clerk and planning,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Much improved over the old system. It's coordinated together now.
I've heard stories of the old system, but I never used it.
Should have been with the old system when they did it by hand.
you were there, weren't you, Bob?
Just at
He used
the
as abacus.
very, okay,
Collective
sorry I
loss.
even brought it up. Yes, I remember when they used to add them up, they pulled what they call envelopes out of the file drawers.
Yeah.
And they would have these roll-away carts, I guess. And they were wide enough for one row of the envelopes, and they had them called controls. And it, from a certain number to a certain number, because they were all in account number order in the files instead of map order. So they would pull out a certain number, and they would add them up by hand with an adding machine to see if the computer label total in the computer of that group matched what they added up with a calculator.
That's
wait
an
a minute.
accountant.
Why would you be, I came in and I said, this is crazy. We eliminated 2 weeks of the entire staff of 30-some people working on that to see if it balanced.
Yeah.
And then there was hue and cry about, oh, what happens if we miss one? I said, so, we'll just correct it. Well, we went on and never had a problem. And then we went in a different computer system and
You go on without balancing.
I know.
I know.
Having a hard time.
You're like, I hear what you're saying, but it makes no sense.
But
Bob had a 10-feet abacus, so he could.
yeah,
It took a lot longer in those days.
Portable abacus.
once in a great while you'd find something with an error, but generally not. So out of 40-some thousand, you find, maybe 10 or so. So what? You just correct them and send out the adjusted tax bill, and off you go. Instead of having the entire appraisal staff and the office staff work for probably close to 3 weeks doing that.
Yeah.
Imagine the
I'd like-
expense
Yeah, I know.
of the staff.
And they
time
could have
for
been
that.
doing something else. But as the computer systems have evolved, they've needed less and less and less people. Enough of mine.
I'm thinking of that song, Were You There When They Crucified the Lord? That perhaps is about Bob.
It could be, yes. Sorry I brought it up. Okay. Questions for
Oh,
Katie?
she forgot to mention the most important thing.
Uh-huh.
That's
The
on the
10-key
treasurer's
calculator?
budget. We're not,
It's also on the
That
finance
10-key
budget.
thing?
Yeah, I see that.
The 10% reduction does cut out the 10-key calculator.
Uh-oh.
not on mine. Not my 10 key, your 10 key. That's the treasurer's.
It cuts it out on the finance one too.
Uh-oh.
No, it doesn't. It's right here. No, I still get mine.
Yeah.
I know it's
You see how this
important.
works now.
The other expense jumped up to $30,500 from 21.5. Did I miss that explanation?
Let's see. So with foreclosures and doing the accelerated foreclosures, we have to pay a lot more for our lien searches. And so that was mainly why it jumped up. This year, we've already gone over our budget for lien searches.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good catch, man. They keep trying to throw in that 10-key thing to divert our attention from the real dollar.
Any other questions for Katie? John, Neil, do you have questions?
No. Nope.
Okay, tentative approval for finance tax budget proposal.
So much.
Do I have a second? Discussion? Anybody? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to treasurer.
So the treasurer, not much has changed on there. We're not requesting any computers this year. For the original budget, we do have the 10-key calculator in there. The 10% does not have the 10-key. She would lose that.
Did you really put all the interest earnings in your budget for the treasurer?
Yes, I did. I worked hard for that.
So this one is actually a profit center.
It is.
Yeah. The contracted services is all just for basic fees that we're required to pay for banking services and insurance. And then on the 10% reduction, we did take away the 10-key and any conferences. Megan wouldn't be able to attend any of those. She would only be able to just pay the dues.
So
So that would
it
be
doesn't
the
work
only
out to
change.
an actual 10% because there's just not room in
There's
this
not.
budget.
There's not much to get. It's 4.5%
You can't
reduction.
cut the treasurer statutorily.
So
And
what
then
it-
all the other are banking fees and stuff that we're contractually obligated to pay, so
So it's this 4.5 up here at the
yes,
top? Okay.
that's all we're able to cut. It's just such a small budget, but it is a profit center, as was pointed out.
I think we should entertain a motion to adopt the 4.5% cut.
No 10-key for
At
you.
least cut out the 10-key, right?
We can be done with that conversation.
So it's a pretty simple budget, actually, so
It
I
is.
have a motion to accept the tentative budget proposal for the treasurer's office.
So moved. We're just trying to make you sweat a little
Do I have a
bit.
second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Any discussion, since nobody wanted to jump in and prove it? You're still thinking about it? Sam?
This will all
Is
come
that a
back to the
10-key
table.
for each hand? One for the treasurer and one for,
What was that,
What was the
John?
question?
oh, I was just joking about the 10-key. Asking, were there two 10-keys or just like one for each hand or just one 10-key between the two budgets?
There's one in finance and one in treasurer.
Oh, okay.
Greg, any comments? Melissa?
I'm good.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All righty.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. What?
I'm looking for Darius, I don't see him.
Hello? Did you need him?
Well, he's next.
We could do that. I thought I saw Debbie come in just a minute ago.
She did. She'll be here in a minute.
Okay.
We could take her and then call Darius, I guess.
That works. I think we're just way ahead of schedule.
Debbie, are you ready? We'll call Darius and take you out of turn here. Bobby, can you get hold of Darius? You know, as we go along here, yesterday and today, we have cut and cut and cut, and there's just skeleton crews anymore for each department.
Yeah.
For the lay people
Pretty
in
much what it comes
on
down
the
to.
budget.
And the commissioners have already been through the budget once with all the
Yeah.
department heads. So.
It's, I mean, it shows that we have about 325, 340 employees, but almost all of that came, the total county employment came from outside the general fund.
Yeah.
Almost all. Maybe added a couple in the sheriff's office, but not many. Oh, here's Darius. Good morning.
Good morning. You've got a couple minutes to catch your breath. Oh, wait, no, Debbie's.
Oh, which way would you go? I'm good either way.
We'll take you right now.
Okay.
First come, first served.
Yeah. Don't mind my eye wiping. Apparently those trees I walked by just are, whoa. Okay, so I believe each of you have my organization plan.
Mhm.
So that's pretty clear and small. And we can go with the regular general fund, 6,000 account for the county clerk. So on the clerk's fees, I kept it at the 350,000. Depending on what this COVID-19 does, where that goes for the revenue. The CAFA grant got from the treasurer's office. Last year I did not put in for the Oregon motor voter reimbursement from the state because they didn't think they were gonna get it. It did get approved. I ended up getting 7,000, but it ranges from 5 to 7, so I averaged it out to bringing in 6,000. They did say that they were approved to get it for this next fiscal year. Reimbursement for elections, I have for sure 2 elections this next year. General fund, probably the likelihood it'll bring in any fund, it's just gonna cost a lot of money. But for the special district election in May of 2021, we do get reimbursed in full for that. So, we might even make more than 50. I've heard talk that cities may put some measures on there. That's an election that then they would have to pay for, so that would be an extra bonus. So the revenue I've got down is $407,860. The next expenses are the personnel expenses, except for the extra help, which I've moved from 8,000 to 12,000. HR's been really good with working with me. I had that 4,000 in contracted services, but my staff that I use for elections, I don't use them a lot. So when they go to Atlas, they have to do a massive amount of paperwork. They have to watch videos, and I've had them walk out and say, it's not worth working for you. So they just walk off and they won't work for me. So then I'm left with no workers. And HR said they have no problems with putting them in the system because I don't use altogether that many people. So I moved it out of contracted services and moved it into extra help. As you can see on the PERS, the law changed. I don't have the date, but you might know it. But sometime it's changed recently where any,
I think it was.
So some of my employees are great employees that have worked for school districts just for PERS jobs. And I don't want to quit using them just because we have to pay PERS on them. I mean, these are some of my best workers. So some of them, we didn't do the whole, not all of them are PERS past employees, but some of them are. So we've had to increase the amount of money we've got in PERS, roughly the $2,244. So that's our personnel. Go down to supplies. This is a presidential year. Yes, there is an additional $4,000 in there. Mainly that $4,000 is the measure flyers that we are required to put in a general election. The general election has so many state measures, sometimes other measures too, but it's the majority are state measures. There's not enough room on a ballot to put all the wording for all the text of the measures, so you're required to put a measure flyer in there. And that measure flyer costs me between $3,000 and $4,000 for my voters. As always, you have more voters for any general election than you do any other time. So you do send out a lot more ballots. So that increased by the $4,000 because of the presidential. On the information technology, CB stands for Clear Ballot. That's my tabulation system. And we found out through we get upgrades every so often from Clear Ballot. And this year when we went to get our upgrade in March, we found out the servers I have, which are laptops, that was bought in 2015, would not handle the upgrade. So I had to buy new servers, which I had to scrap money together out of my budget currently. I was able to do that and purchase the 2 new servers. But then I was hit with 2 unexpected March elections. So those servers have been purchased but can't be installed yet because I have 2 elections plus my May primary election, so they're sitting there. But at least they're paid for. And during this process, we found out that the 5 laptops we have are not going to be supported by November. And my IT informed me of that, so we scheduled to replace those laptops. Some of them will be laptops, some will be regular PC. I believe in your guys' packet, I hope I included it with my equipment list. And I did for the first time, and it's not in my packet, so I'm thinking I might have forgot to do. Okay, sorry about that when I presented it. I have a replacement plan. I presented it last year, and it shows the rotation of all the equipment in my office that I have. And it showed exactly which pieces of equipment was going to be replaced. So that's where that is. We keep usually $500 in the under 5,000 equipment. That's usually for minor things that unexpectedly break. Postage, last year we had the 30,500. That was 12,000 of that was put in there in case we had to pay for the prepaid postage that's now required by law as of January to be paid out at the state and get theirs set up. They did get theirs set up, just actually moments before my March election. So we were able to not spend that. That hasn't been spent in my budget, and that will be returned to the general fund. But I did ask for 24,000. It's a presidential year. You have tons more voters interacting with you, so sending out voter notification cards, all the paperwork we have to do for them, sending out ballots, and people are just, sometimes they misplace ballots, so you send out, a ton more, like maybe 2,000 more ballots for replacements just because people misplace their ballots and can't find them. So postage costs go up quite a bit. Usually every January, the last few years, we've also noticed an increase in postage rates. So I've got 24,000 in that. Insurance premiums are set by the treasurer's office. BOPTA, we keep at 3,000. We have not spent a lot this year on BOPTA yet. Unfortunately, things changed. The weather caused us not to be able to go to any of our trainings because the roads got closed. We ended up having the COVID-19, so we only used 2 board members, the bare minimum we could, so reimbursements to them for stipends wasn't used, but next year, all of them will be required to go to training because they missed this year, so we kept the 3,000 for that, and that also pays for Helion. In Helion, there's a module, I call it, for BOPTA, and that's where you process the BOPTA claims. And the maintenance, annual maintenance, I pay out of that too. So training and traveling, I've got $6,200. I now have a election director, and with the presidential election, I was able to take her in February to the OACC conference. Of course, this next conference is in August. We have not got notification that it's going to be canceled, but it will be a very important, for election purposes, a very important conference to go to. So I've got that down for both me and her to go to those conferences. And then also that takes care of my drop site deputies. We do a lot of picking up ballots during a general election because the turnout goes up 80–85%. So you've got someone on the road running to get those ballots all the time. We pay them by the hour plus the mileage fees. I imagine with the new upgrade to our clear ballot system, we'll have a user meeting that the election staff, we all have to go to. It's usually in Salem. And then software license maintenance. It did go up a little bit, roughly $2,000. That is for, I had the opportunity, I knew my system in Clear Ballot was going to need upgraded. And I knew that it's very expensive to do those upgrades. And so when I went to conference, I kind of put the word out and asked other counties if they were maybe looking at getting rid of equipment that, you know, maybe would benefit me. Ended up, I talked to a county that had gone with Clear Ballot system. They used it one election, decided it wasn't for them. So they had all of this equipment and they weren't doing anything with it. So I had been quoted about $25,000 for a scanner I needed. He sold it to me for $3,500. And he delivered it to me even. He brought it down here. It only had like 39,000 ballots sent through it. I mean, these scanners take hundreds of thousands of ballots through them. I mean, I was just ecstatic. I mean, I kind of whined. I mean, we're a small county, we don't have money. There was a lot of counties that wanted it. He had 2 scanners, but I was able to get one of those and felt very lucky to do so. So that's also why my $11,000 for equipment is not $25,000 more than it is. Because I, again, talked to Melissa and scrambled different things. I managed to use no boards or extra help for both my March elections. I just made sure all the staff did it all to save as much money as I could so I could buy the $3,500 scanner. And I do have it. It's not installed. They charge, Clear Ballot has to install it. Our IT doesn't touch any of my Clear Ballot tabulation system at all. And they charge $1,700 to install that. Don't have $1,700, so they're gonna, if I get approved for buying these PCs, they're gonna charge me $1,700 to install them. They said they'd install the scanner, install everything at one time, give me my upgrade, so I only have to pay a $1,700 fee. I'm pretty thrifty. So it was worth it to me to have it. No, I have it. It'll be installed for my November election. I'll have my upgrade. Hopefully I'll have all my new equipment. because I do have a very close timeline for buying new equipment, getting it installed, getting the upgrade in time to start having everything ready and tested in order to do my general election. So they actually are waiting to hear somewhat from me so they can get the stuff ordered, because as you may be aware of with the COVID-19, some PCs and laptops are on back order because everybody is ordering them so they can work at home. Contracted services, I had moved 4,000 from that up to personnel. And we've got, in that contracted services is the ballot assembly people that put together all of our ballot packets for both elections. And then, of course, my allocated costs. Able insurance, and there's 4,000 left into Atlas for extra help, or I've got one girl in my recording office that will probably be taking some family leave, possibly for 3 months. So that's, of course, going to be partly in the middle of my general election, which I can't always devote time to the recording office when I need to be in the election office. So I left $4,000 into that. Any questions?
Debbie, John, great job of controlling expenses, and thanks for that percentage change column you have on the far right of your budget.
Okay, thank you.
I was just glancing over your 10% cut budget, the $6,500 in postage. What line item does that come out of? I mean, is there a breakout for postage, or just you're just going to find it in that line item?
Okay. The $6,500. I see, I did that. I know it's hard to say. You have to grab it at something. You know, I put cutting one full-time employee. Most of my budget, as it was commented on last year, is elections. I mean, I can try to get by with $6,500 less, whether I make that, because there's so many things I'm required to do, those voter notification cards, the voter notification cards, the ballots, all the letters. I mean, I guess I took it from a fund, and, you know, unfortunately with the election, the way it works, if I don't have the money, they're gonna have to give it to me anyway. I mean, I didn't know where else to take it. I did try to talk to Melissa. I mean, it's just, where do you take it from when you don't see that you have anywhere to take it from?
Right. Yeah. No, I see that.
Yeah.
Debbie has 2 people in elections and 2 in the clerk's office.
And if you look at
And that's it.
this document, so if you look right above the red line, this is just for the recording office. If you look at the time they have for vacation and sick leave and floating holidays, and you add up how much time, and both these girls seem to take most of their time, I'm already left with 2.75 months with one employee in that office. And I'd honestly say my office may have more public in it than any other office. So, you know, right now we may be getting a little more done because I'm doing marriages just myself in the evening because I have a very high-risk employee. She has to leave work. And then I have appointments and I bring people in and do marriages at 4:30 every day. And a lot of this time, I'm also devoted down to elections because we try to save as much money with not using any extra staff than we have to. So, you know, I mean, that's a lot of time when you look at it that way, and you've got requiring hours, you know, required from minimum, you've gotta record 9 to 4. We do record from 8:30 to 4:30. I did shut my hours down for about a year from 9 to 4. Had a lot of complaints. You know, title companies aren't happy, banks aren't happy, the public definitely are not happy. You know, and you know, it kind of gives you an idea through 2016, the amount of documents that we do. And within those documents, it's not just taking a document, recording it, you have to scan it in. You spend a lot of time reviewing each and every document you look at to make sure it meets all the requirements, the notaries are correct. You know, I don't have a percentage, but we return back a fair amount that are not meeting those qualifications. Then you have to create all your rejection letters and everything to send out to them. The active docs are usually what I maybe think most people think of as the Board of Commissioner filings, all your contracts, all your business meetings and stuff like that. We not only scan those on and take them in, we actually index all of them and microfilm them and make sure they're all good. Marriage licenses, we do close to 400 marriage licenses a year. Again, the application is online, but you do work, you know, probably at least 20 minutes with each couple that you do a marriage license with at a minimum, if they've already filled out the form online. If not, then you're setting them up at a computer, helping them, because usually those people don't know how to run a computer either. Dog licenses, you might notice that it's grown a lot. I keep on top of my records, I guess you'd say, and I noticed when I came on, the dog records hadn't been maintained real well, and there was a lot of past due, so every year I send out notices to anybody that hasn't renewed their licenses, and tell them they've got 30 days to do so. It's brought in a lot more money for animal control, and the amount of license I issue are a lot higher. So it takes time. We send out the monthly reminders to every month. We send out about 400 or more reminders to the public that their dog licenses, and then you have to process those licenses when they come back. Or if they buy it through a vendor, which isn't happening right now, then they get sent to us and we still process them. They take the money, but they send us a check. We do all the work. So that takes time. We've got one girl and we're going to train another one for the BOPTA. Of course, that usually only happens from the middle of October through about the middle of March, I think it is, that we deal with BOPTA. Cases, we have 57. I will note that I just got it approved by the board. It will now, they've always been free to file a BOPTA. There's a $35 fee now to help cover some of the costs of the process we have to do. And on this form here, that's got the little yellow stripe on the bottom, the individual thing. So this is just some different things that I mentioned that I saved on. The scanner is the big one that I'm really proud of, almost saved $25,000. Voter notification cards, the amount we send out because of Motor Voter has increased substantially. We go through a massive amount. In 2017, we bought 30,000 at a price of $1,500. I knew I needed about 70,000, so I went around to a lot of people, finally found a place in Myrtle Point to print them. Yes, they're going to be in black ink instead of blue, but after reviewing the law, there's nothing that actually says. There's a lot of requirements for that card, but the ink color is no longer there. So we went to black. I got 70,000 cards for the same $1,500, so I figure I saved $2,000 there. The clear ballot server and scanner installation, that's at $1,700 by not having it installed until I get everything done. Personnel savings, so there's been some changes in my office. I did work in the front office of the recording office. It was during the summer for 3 months, trying to save some money and also hoping to find the right perfect employee, which I feel I did. Anyway, per Heather in tax office, finance office, she said that there'll be $35,000 for my personnel line items this year that will be going back into the general fund. Postage allocations, as I mentioned earlier, I had asked for $12,000 in case of emergency. The state didn't get it set up. Lucky us, they did. I did not spend the money, and the $12,000 will go back to the general fund. So, kind of my recap of savings, in my mind, there was a savings of $75,000.
Questions for Debbie?
No questions?
No? John or Neil?
No, good job.
I always
Thank you.
appreciate
Entertain a
Debbie's
motion?
budget presentation.
I moved
Move tentative approval?
I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
Is that for the 10% or the full?
Normal. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Yes,
It's totally tentative.
yes, I
Yeah.
caught that wording.
All right, thank you
Totally
very
set.
much.
So, do you want me to go over the 6,002, the county clerk records fund?
Yes.
The 117?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so, clerk fees coming in, I expect to have at the beginning of the fiscal year, 107,000 in there. Clerk fees to come in is 14,000. The lien record fee, 10,000. Interest earnings, which probably plummeted with everything else falling, but I put 1,000 based on what we did, but that's, yeah. Okay, so expenses, supplies, I put in 10,000. We do have a bunch of microfilm that needs to be done. That's what's like those commissioner journals. We are re-indexing the commissioner journals back to, I think, around 1995, recategorizing a bunch of them. We had all the hard copies of them. You're not required to do that. And we're categorizing them more accurately so that we can tell which ones have permanent retention, which ones do not. There's not a lot of reason to make microfilm, which gets expensive, on things that are not permanent retention. So the categories were not real clear, so my full-time staff have been, that's a project of theirs, and I'd say they're about halfway done with it. And once we get that done, then we'll be making a bunch of microfilm to have those on. I like to keep up on my microfilm. Last year, I think it was last year, the elections hadn't been microfilmed since 2003, but a lot of it's permanent retention. So I've been reviewing the retention and making sure that that's up to date. So I keep 10,000 in there so I can always make the microfilm I'm required to. Equipment, $1,000. We've got some, what do you call it, microfiche readers and stuff like that we might need to buy a little part here and there for. The maintenance, software maintenance, that's for the Helion recording system. So that recording system has a maintenance fee. Animal control pays the part. I make Helion break it down for me. So animal control gives me a certain amount of money each year. I'm not sure what they're gonna give me next year, but they right now give me 5,000. I think she's gonna decrease it a little, but I take the maintenance for the animal control out of that. BOPTA, I'm making BOPTA funds pay for the maintenance out of that, which leaves my balance at the 9588 that pays for the active doc, the marriages, and the land records. Contracted services, there's always projects that could be done, or depending on staff that may take off for family leave or something like that, so I leave that 10,600 in there for contracted services if I was to want to hire someone to help do some of the back indexing. We're very cautious about doing that because you need to understand the documents before you can really index something correctly. On the capital outlay this year, our microfiche readers, Bob's favorites, are dying. They won't let us renew the maintenance on them. They have very minimal parts. If you lose a light bulb, you might, but anything else that breaks, you probably aren't. So if they break, I'm gonna have to buy a new one, and I'm to the point that I think it's probably, customers are having a lot of issues with getting the reels on there. I'm probably gonna buy a new system, which is called a Scan Pro. I did not get a quote on that. I got quotes for most everything else. But I paid about $15,000 for that system last time. And then we already have one, and it's not used by the public, but it does a lot better images. A lot of libraries use them for like newspaper articles because they do such great images, but it will take some time to train the public on them. But we're gonna give it a try, aren't we, Bob?
Excuse me, the current ones are so difficult
Yeah.
to feed. It maybe takes 20 minutes for me to I finally kind of figured it out a little bit, where I pull a whole bunch out of the reel, put it on, try and feed it through by hand and whirl around my finger, and then even that doesn't work. So
Yeah,
it's
and I hate using them. I get car
extremely
sick,
difficult.
actually. I don't on the other one, but that one, I can get so car sick that I just can't hardly even walk.
winding it back on is sometimes even a challenge. It doesn't want to wind up.
Yeah, they're getting worn out. I mean, I haven't had maintenance on it, I think, close to 2 years. They just don't make parts, and so, I mean, it doesn't pay to have someone come work on them. It costs more than the machine is worth, and they may not have the part to do it.
Right.
So, but again,
They were great 30 years ago.
yeah, not quite
Sounds
a
like
year
we've gotten
ago,
money.
about 9 months ago, they did a really good
Sounds like we've
bargain
got
at
money.
sale, and I didn't need one yet, and I didn't have the money moved in that, so I didn't buy it. I'm hoping within this next year, they'll put another good bargain on, and I'll buy it at that time. Otherwise, I may not spend that. I mean, I do like to get a bargain. So, the operating contingency and the unappropriated balance.
Great.
Yep.
Move to tentatively approve the budget for the county clerk records funds.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Deb.
Okay, if I can add one more thing, that through the allocated cost, I did a lot of thinking about it. I am now billing during the election for the allocated cost for the computers that are dedicated to my clear ballot system. So I think I may have 11, altogether I have 23 computers, and I think I have 11 that are dedicated to the election process. And for the March election, the 2 March elections, I was able to bill for the allocated cost, and it was just a hair over 3,000 for each election. So that is gonna bring in another 6,000. And I will continue with that process, and I talked to Megan about figuring out which part of my office is dedicated to carrying out an election, so we can do other additional, besides the PCs, the allocated cost and bill for my elections. Not every election do I get reimbursed, like a primary or a general, but my special districts, these March elections, if the state was to give me a special January election, then again, I could bill for that. So I'm hoping to recover some of those allocated costs in the future.
That's good.
Good.
Yep, that's good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, IT, Darius.
Am I supposed to wipe it down first?
Are we out? No, we got some.
Oh.
Or not.
Here you go.
Sit there.
Thank you.
Good morning.
All right.
I apologize for being late.
We're early, actually.
We're ahead of schedule.
Okay. So So you got my organizational chart, nothing's changed on that, it's the same as the year before. On my normal budget, the personal services totals is up 3.5%. We have no control over that. I did have my systems administrator resign. And so if we start out, then depending on where the replacement employee starts out, it might not quite be that much. Going down through the line item supplies, you can see that we budgeted $5,000 last year. It's now mid-April and we've spent most of that. We went ahead and budgeted another $5,000. That's network cables, mice, stuff like that, expendable items that we use to support day-to-day operations. Repair and maintenance, we last year budgeted $5,000. This year we really haven't had much to spend on, much we needed to spend on. So we're still asking for another $5,000, but we don't touch that unless we need to. So a lot of times that goes back to the general fund. Software, unforeseen, that kind of similar. We budgeted $5,000. We've spent almost $400. We're asking for another $5,000. That's kind of a contingency fund. Sometimes departments will come up and they need to buy software and they don't have money for it, or we need to buy software for the general user population. We use that for that. If it doesn't come up, we try to return it every year. Equipment under $5,000. Last year we had $3,500. We've spent almost $1,800 this year. We're asking for $3,500 again. That's small things like personal computers, printers, stuff like that. Insurance premiums, there's been a forecasted decrease of 29%. That's awesome, we'll take that. Training and travel, last year we had $13,000. We've spent almost $5,800 this year. We did bump that down by 22% to $10,000. With a new staff member coming on, I anticipate our costs will go up a little bit this next budget year, getting them ready to support the things that they're going to need to work on. Maintenance agreements. Virginia and I have been working, these next couple, Virginia and I have been working really hard to identify contracts and agreements where we can push the costs down, either by going to a different vendor or changing what we're doing. On this one, we had $82,000, almost $83,000. Of that, we've spent $53,000. This year, we believe we'll only need just shy of $81,000. So we have a projected decrease of 2.5%. On software and licensing and maintenance, same kind of thing. We're shifting things around. We're projecting a decrease of $18,000 there, which comes up to 17.5% decrease is what we're asking for. Contracted services, this one's going to go up a little, and it's kind of that balancing act where we're moving things around. Contracted services will go up a little, and that one we typically increase by 5 to 10% because contracts go up every year. And that one, there's an increase of like 1.5%. And then capital outlay equipment. This is one I really want to talk to you guys about, these next two. This one in computer hardware. Last year, the budget came in at $10,000 each. We've only spent about $4,000 of that for the new video conferencing system. We kind of try to hold on to that till the end of the fiscal year to see what we really need. We use that to buy servers and network equipment. $20,000 is not a lot of money. A couple of years ago, I spent $25,000 on three new servers. So in 2 years, we're going to have to spend another $25,000. 3 years ago, we bought storage, and that was $45,000. So this combined $20,000 is it makes me a little nervous. You can see from years prior, it was quite a bit higher. So in another 2 to 3 years, we're gonna be hitting the life cycle on some of these things, and we're gonna have to think about what we're gonna do. I would, what's also not reflected on here, and it kind of goes up to software licensing and maintenance, the whole Microsoft issue. Our email servers are 2013, which makes them 7 years old, and in Microsoft times, that's forever. So we need to think about something. The new kind of model they're pushing for is that you pay $15 a month, and you get the Office suite, and you get a hosted email box. Because of some of the, like the sheriff's office and crime victims, assistance, child welfare, we need to be on the government cloud, which puts us in a little more expensive arena. I know Coos Health and Wellness is looking at like a $5 a month option, but I think because of the sheriff's office and some of the others, we can't guarantee that the necessary level of security in that model. So $15 a month per employee is what we're probably going to have to pay in the next year or two. I don't think we're going to be able to kick that can much further down the road.
So how much does that work out to, Darius?
It's I don't know. We're 250. That's
36,000, 40,000 a year. I
Yeah.
guess 200 employees, but yeah.
Yeah. So, then I don't have that kind of money, so then do we charge that back? What we normally do is when you buy a computer, you spend another $400 for Office.
Yeah.
That doesn't include the email, which, that was all paid for before I got here, and then we finished the implementation after I got here.
Okay.
And then, equipment, we haven't really been buying much equipment lately, so I would say if some of these, like some of the lawsuits and stuff that we're going to, some of that comes in, we may want to look at earmarking some money for some of these infrastructure replacements.
Right. Agreed. And then something that I didn't understand until I was a commissioner, and our budget committee members may already get this, but even if Darius, like we put in this equipment to stream, and then I believe that's been submitted to SAFE for reimbursement under their grant program that they're running to help offset costs of COVID-19. It doesn't go back into Darius's budget, right? It goes into the general fund. So we get reimbursement, but Darius doesn't have that money to spend again, even though he got money to pay for those costs. Just so you know.
And then if there's no questions on that one, we were asked to present a budget with a 10% cut. We just went over the numbers. We voluntarily cut just about 2%, just by changing around some contracts and stuff. I don't really see any other areas that I can cut from other than personnel. Given that I knew that the systems administrator was going to look for an opportunity out of state, that's where we got it from. So we looked at eliminating that position. That results in a net 15.5% decrease. The struggle with that is that a lot of that position, they come in and work over the weekend to do system upgrades, or they work late. And so I can cover that, but then that means that either I'm going to be working 14, 15 hours a day, or I'm not going to be here during the middle of the day
Right.
to attend meetings and stuff like that. So, but that I just don't see anywhere else really that we can cut. I can do a couple $1,000s maybe, but I just don't think I can find 10%.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions?
Greg? Neil? John?
No. Good job, Darius.
Thank you, John.
I move to tentatively approve the budget for IT.
Is there a second? Okay. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is on the proposed budget without the 10%. We've been doing that with almost everybody. There's a couple of exceptions, but that's pretty standard until we get to the bottom of things and then start over.
And I want you to know I am realistic. I understand that you guys have a lot to consider. we'll do what we can to support that.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
you guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you want to take a 10-minute break? It's about that time.
Sure.
So we're in recess till 10 o'clock.
And then we'll resume with forestry?
Then
Okay. Mike just sent us the numbers, did you see that? Okay. No, I'm good, thanks.